if you need the really complex queries like projection queries, the statistical queries, reporting or grouping, or some sort of the statistical presentation or graphical presentation, to build those services, REST service, and use those kind of services to make some graphs or historical reporting or statistical information, then you can write down the complex queries into the Cassandra database and build the services and deploy the service and use it. It is very simple. It's called the projection query. You can query annotate it in the here. That's I will try to show you later, part of the other screencast. How can you write down really complex statistical query? Then we can make, say, how many plots is registered 2019 or 18, and what type of buildings is registered, who will be the owners, and how the city development is done with the specific patterns. Then you can get the graphs and see the information into the graphs, and this is the service you need to implement with the complex query or grouping or sorting, sum and counting, all sort of information is possible. So see the simple, very simple. Save plot information, update the plot informations, and then so on so forth. This is exactly the same model. You see the we define the interfaces that we need, and we have the implementation class and service annotation. We inject the two dependency, the different dependency that I need. A repository is a Cassandra repository template general repository for some very other use cases. User registration Cassandra repository, maybe Cassandra repository using this one, and then AutoWare the Cassandra operation and Cassandra template, and then it works. So we try to give it to you how flexible, how efficient to use all the existing repositories, and CRUD and repositories, JPA repository, paging and SOAPs repositories, or the Cassandra templates, or the Cassandra specific repository. That's the intention for this screencast, to give it to you the possibility, but your choice which one has to be take over for your requirement, for your specification. The very simple implementations, like let's do a lot of things here. Very simple implementations. So delete and find one, update one, and from different sources. This combination of possibility, how can you do the operations, the very basic CRUD operation, create, update, delete operation, and plus the complex queries, the reporting, the projection queries you can write down also then there's a repository interface level. So this is our REST controller. This is one of the most important parts. So we define the REST controller. So we need two controller, the plot info controller and user registration controller. And just we define as a REST controller and request mapping. So it is the base URL, plot infos, and then it has a controller, and then we inject the AutoWare, our services, our interfaces, and then interfaces implements this and call the interfaces with the specific request mappings and type of the methods. You see there's get methods, we call the service get all infos, that's we already implemented. And then you have some request method get methods, and then HTTP created, status created, and then he has another method get method, find only specific ID based plots. Very simple. If you are in a systematic way, it's very simple. So that means you define our repositories, you define all the domain models, what you need in the specifications, relationships, and then you define the repositories, and then define your interfaces as a service, and then implement the services based on interfaces when the implementation in service done. And then just you define your REST controller, and that's all, finish. If you define the REST controller, it's a very simple, very systematic, very system approach. So please follow the structure that we have it here. So you have control, you have a models, you have a repositories, and then you have a services, and you have a service implementations, and then you have a controller, and that's all. You saw the controller definition is here. So inject the services, and then call the services and build our controller, our request mappings. I mean the request mappings, getter methods, get method, put method, post method, and delete method. This is very standard CRUD operations. So put and delete with the specific ID, put update with the ID, and then the body of the registration. So you see the registration controller, that's only simple two controller, as I said. This is a subset of our enterprise applications. You define the control REST controller, and then you inject the where your service implementation interface. Yes, you can do implement the service and even the interface, doesn't matter which one you implement, but normally you have inject your interface name and then call the services from there. So just follow the standard Spring Boot annotation approach and read the Google it and find it. And if you those have no experience, I already started like the basic Spring Boot screencast, but we didn't have enough time to implement it to give it to you. But I believe we can do it in the later days or later month for them. But just you can pick up this like really 10 or 20 annotations, and then you can Google it and really get idea what I mean, how can you handle those things. So our what we did just so let's stop it. What we did just we define our models, we define our all the repositories that's we need depending what type of repository you try to use it, and we define our services and we define our service implementations. We did the implementation, and end of the day we define our controllers. This is our controllers for the request and response controller, or request response mappings with the REST controller annotations. That's all. So when the all is done, then you run the application. That's all. Run the Maven installation, because this is the Maven build project. So you install the applications locally, run the application, install the application locally, and you see the real idea. You see the approach that we have. So you run the applications, and then you have some so you see the jar file is created, the standard jar files with the configuration. So you see the jar file is created, Cassandra REST services as for your project's names, and jar file, standard jar file is created. And this is this jar file. You can just copy it to put it in the local directory, and after that you can configure your jar files. This is one of the most important part I'm talking about. So you have a properties like you have some application.deb properties, and you have some application.production, application.release, or application.test environments. You have all the application.properties files. Then you have some possibilities. For one of the example what I did here, you have the one command line tools. I write down here the command. You said where your Java is located, where your your port is located. That's why I will talk about this one. As I said, this is the application.properties. You see, this is the properties. That's what I'm trying to do, to override it. So that is 1020. Maybe this where you try to install the application. Maybe this port is used, and this is the overriding. It has the application name. It has a port number, it's a local host where the Cassandra located, the key space names, and then so on and so forth. That's the things. No, not here. We are here. So key space name, you see that exactly we defined our set variables, our environmental variables. We see where is Java is located, and this is the port number application, maybe the port number, other port number, and this is the local host because we are testing with the local host. Maybe the PC is located in Bangladesh or India or Pakistan or USA or Canada, doesn't matter. Just put it here, the IP address of your PC in the network, and then you available port, and then where your jar file located. If it's in the cluster, in the cloud, you can take the jar file from the cloud, or take the jar file from the Artifactory, your company Artifactory, or or cloud artifactory you can take from the jar files. For our case, we just take it from our project structure, from our repository, and we set it which environment we are. So we are testing with development. You can production test, because exactly the name that we are talking about, the application underscore development.